Hello and welcome to Perfect Cellar's Perfect Tasting Box. We are here with Christopher Delalonde again and talking about amazing wines tasting boxes one more time this year. And yeah, let's see how they taste after the intro. Hello, Chris. Welcome back.
Hello, Csaba. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the tasting box. I believe we're preparing Christmas, so
Very much.
it's a good call because the three ones we're going to talk about definitely have a Christmas orientation to them, not just because they are rather delicious. I'm not saying that because I'm biased, because it's actually quite true. Especially, well, we're going to go one after the other, and then, as usual, at the end, we will talk about what we think is the best expression within that three lineup. But I already have my favorite by far, at least. But
You have to keep that to the end. That's it. Yeah.
Csaba, please open the conversation and
Okay.
I'll take it from there.
Cool. So basically, we have obviously three wines. And then the first one, which we're starting with, is something quite interesting from Toro, from Spain.
Indeed.
Just to give away a little bit, we have three wines which are quite big and full on, but that's what you can expect from Christmas. And this is a lovely red, 14.5%, so quite a big one. But yeah.
But you see, funnily enough, in my tasting notes, I don't get the alcohol. It's more about the juice, if I may say. This is exactly a Tinto Crianza 17, so a bit of bottle age. 100% tempranillo, as they call it, Tinto del Toro, in that part, in Castilla y León, so on the western, sort of southwestern part of Spain. It's a very small appellation if you compare to the rest, especially. It only covers about 1,500 hectares, so it's quite small. But what really is interesting about Toro is that it's quite high in altitude, and it's very so it's very flat, surrounded by mountains, and it's very prone to hail. I was actually there last year with another estate, and I was really amazed about what they do. I mean, a lot of it is really all vine. It's a massal selection, so basically vine are very individual, and everything is worked, by hand. You can't really mechanize. It's all bush vine.
Yeah.
And it's staggering to think about the 21st century and still that really old-fashioned of working a vineyard and bringing up to the fore some amazing wines, which Toro still, very much in the shadow as such. It's not really known. Ribera del Duero really takes all the space and all the big cultural and the exemplary acknowledgement from the wine world and the journalism. Whereas Toro, as far as I can see and things that I can test within the last, 5 years, really comes to me with so much more craft. Knowingly as well, it's only red wine. There's no white wine produced. Whereas now for Ribera del Duero, for example, you have the deal for white as well as for rosé. So maybe something to explore in the future. But here we're only talking about red.
Yes, and Toro is a
Interesting.
very underrated
Yeah, I mean it's
region.
underrated or over. I mean underrated. I think it's more, as far as I'm concerned, it's more the fact that it's completely under the radar. It's really unknown. It's very small, and Ribera del Duero, as I said, really takes all the shine because of the big brands and the big quality wines like Vega Sicilia, for example, or even Pingus. It's that sort of region that is considered as the wine for king and the king of wine. Therefore, Toro will kind of very much shine, but on outside of the limelight. And I think it's our job to just bring those cuvées to the fore and trying to shed some light because there is definitely value for money. I mean, look at the
Yeah.
color, the depth.
I think that's when they say plenty of wine for the money.
It's exactly really, to me, really punch above its own weight in every ways. You get really constantly nose. It's a lot of berries, a lot of fruit. Admittedly, those wines were opened today about 2 hours ago, so they really had time to sort of acclimate when it comes to temperature, because obviously I keep them in the fridge to make sure that I chill them, and then the temperature rises when get them out. And you really have it's very kind of composed from red berries and then black fruit, then black berries, plums, maybe a bit of chocolate.
Yeah,
Love,
lots of dark fruit. It
yeah.
jumps out of the glass.
Yeah, there's
Amazing.
definitely a bit of oak there, but it's very subtle in terms of winemaking, and I believe it's a very much a gentle approach in terms of trying to express the terroir, the place it comes from, and the
Mm.
food character of that vintage. And again, 7 years of bottlage really help with developing in those characters. And then you've got this sort of savory, meaty, grilled meats, protein sort of orientation, which really makes it super enticing. And nevertheless, sort of wine that straight away you get an acquaintance with, that tells you, give me some time, give me some space,
Yeah,
open me early, decant me if you can, use large glasses, and you can play around, with, I mean, it's a beautiful imagine. I mean, you can really push that toward the Christmas aspect, but it's also potentially something that you would drink during the summer with a beautiful barbecue.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Again, keep it chilled, keep it cooler than normal. But I think the fruits prospect and the quality in general, as well as the concentration, really goes toward that, because you get a bit of smoke there, you get a little bit of that sort of barbecue grilled character.
and I think with all these Toro wines, especially with this one, you definitely need that protein. You need that, extra bit of meat there, because it's big, it's juicy, it's fruity, and I can easily see this, as you said, during the summer with barbecue, slightly chilled, or at Christmas on the Christmas table, a great value option for a bigger, fuller, juicier red.
Exactly, and also even through that, if you try to reduce your intake as such, you can easily have that with starter. You would argue that, but as long as you go for something like, again, protein based, main courses, and then really strong cheeses. Even though I prefer white wine personally with cheeses, but you could definitely drink that, because that's the lift of acidity, the freshness on the meat palate, that sort of concentration that is just playing around with really soft and gentle tannins. Tempranillo there really showcase what is all about, which is black, red fruit, savory, acidity, freshness, tension, almost like electrifying, acidity to kind of keep the enticement. It's one of the things you start and you don't stop. You drink the bottle. There's no question about it. It's one of those ones that you will go through without doubt. Beautiful finish. Again, maybe a bit of chocolate, maybe a bit of mocha, coffee beans character. Again, the oak shows a little bit there. I don't really know, because there's not really much information I could find on the wine. However, I think, yes, there's definitely some old oak, just to get that oxidal reduction, and then bring to the fore that that capacity, first of all, to age, but also to just deliver pleasure and drinkability. It's stunning, absolutely stunning.
But this is a 2017 vintage, so it's not like it didn't came out yesterday, obviously. Um, how long would you age this?
I don't think. I think the beauty of that kind of wine is that 24 months.
Mm. I
You
was
know,
gonna say a couple of years max, but
yeah, there's not. I don't think there's much need to sit on those wines
yeah.
with that sort of vintage. I mean, 17 is a complicated vintage in Spain, and
And
I think it translates, in that, again, in that approachability. They did everything they could to sort of encapsulate the quality of the vintage, bring forward something that is approachable, juicy, delicious, with a lot of layers, complexity, but still, a very sort of forward character. And today, I think it's at its peak. I don't think you're going to get more
yeah,
out of a bottle like this.
yeah, it's obviously Tempranillo. They call it
Tinto
Tinto de
Toro,
Toro. Yeah, but it's tempranillo, which you probably don't really know in Rioja, for example. This one is a little bit more on the dark side of
Well,
tempranillo.
it's higher in elevation than
Yeah,
Rioja. It's also much further away than any sort of ocean breeze. I mean,
yeah,
arguably, Rioja is protected by the Calabria to the north, which really protects it from the Bay of Biscay sort of
yeah,
influences because it's not that far. Toro, first of all, is much more smaller. It's much more concentrated, and it's very sort of enormously bath of sun during the summer
yeah,
and extremely cold in the
yeah,
winter. We got there, I think it must have been March last year, and walked into the vineyard, and basically I got stuck into mud that deep
yeah,
because the water retainment, because it's a lot of clay, they are, soils are much deeper, much less, I mean, much more worked because you have no choice. And it's very sort of ancient way. As I say, it's all bush vine, so it's really individually crafted one by one. It's an tremendous amount of work to go through, harvest. There's no trellising, there's no systematic
yeah,
approach to machinery, and so again, coming back to the product, I think it translates all those little elements. And to your point, Csaba, Rioja, because it's three different regions. Yeah, of course, Alta is regarded as the motherland and the best area ish,
yeah,
in between commas as such. But it's Rioja is also 350 years old. There is a lot of people there that kind of pull a little bit their quality and their mentality into their vineyards. Now they're also doing, some vineyards, like almost like village allocation, as you find in Burgundy, for example, the Parayes, as they call them.
yeah,
So it's going into a very, very different direction, which is fantastic for the appellation. Toro is definitely not there. It's
yeah,
not there. It's very much the rustic, still almost 19th century approach of winemaking and
yeah,
land in the 21st century. So it's definitely, if you're looking for value for money, this is definitely the region to go for and to hunt wines from that
yeah,
appellation, because there is definitely some younger people that are really trying to achieve something in that kind of very rough land, if I may use that expression.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And with that said, I think we can actually go for competition of it. I don't know if it's competition, it's a different wine. It's 14 and a half, but it's from a very, well, from the other side of the world, actually. It's actually from South Africa.
Yes, from
Uh,
Stellenbosch, so you are, right at the bottom of South Africa. You're coastal. You are also, protected by Ranger Mountain. You have a lot of wind, the doctor, obviously. But what really is interesting there is if you turn the label around, it says there is, okay, Pinotage, bon, Pinotage, the flagship, or what they've tried to establish as the flagship of South Africa. I'm not sure they really achieved it. Shiraz, so Shiraz, and then a grape variety called Roux Bernet. Alors, this is really something that you never see, even though it's very much something that was established in South Africa in the 60s.
yeah,
It's a cross of Prunac and Cabernet Sauvignon. You will not see that grape variety anywhere else. As I said, it was developed in the 60s, trying to basically compete with Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, and trying to understand what the climatology. I mean, if you go into the geology of South Africa, it's millions of years old, but the wine production of South Africa is probably 150 years old,
yeah,
and it was very much kind of Bordeaux, 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 Bordeaux. Eventually, they started to understand the climatology, the terroir, and then some people brought some Cabernet, and then some other went rhone varietals, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Cinsault, and the white grape variety as well. Marsanne, Roussanne, obviously Pinotage in the beginning of the century was really brought to the fore, thinking we're gonna do something with this grape variety, trying to create a benchmark, and like Malbec for Argentina, like Tanat for Uruguay, like Carmenère somewhere for Chile. And unfortunately, that I think that really fell on on its face, but you still have the reminiscence of some loose grape variety that were planted and still sort of bringing some characteristic. It's not, I mean, at 9%, I think they say, you don't really know what is the synergy, the energy brought by this grape variety. But,
Yeah.
if you understand what it is, it's a very colorful, it's a coloric. The pulp is very red, so it's really to bring that intensity in terms of the color, and also some beautiful, again, dark black fruit character that will come onto the mid palate and play, and bring again potentially some juiciness and some depth.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think they're doing very well. I think it's an interesting blend, Cabernet Syrah. Again, something that you don't really see outside of Australia normally.
Yes, I was gonna say it's very, very Aussie
Yeah,
sounding
no, Cabernet Syrah,
combo.
I mean, you have a pet example in France called Domaine de Trévalon that did that in the 70s and 80s and got completely lacerated and destroyed by the appellation system because they didn't think, they don't, appreciate what was it and deemed qualitative enough to be part of an appellation. While Trévalon didn't, so Monsieur Durbar, unfortunately, that passed away, but his daughter kept the boat floating and in a beautiful way, kept doing wines with that direction, even though, yes, it didn't really get the support from the French authorities, but it didn't really matter. Otherwise, exactly, that's the only place you find this. It's very much South Australia, by our side, and some other kind of cooler, well, coolish sort of
Yeah.
climate. So to see that Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinotage, Shiraz, and Cabernet is something that very, very unusual. I mean, don't get me started with the label. I think the label is pretty modernist, very simplistic,
Yeah.
but nice actually, bottle. As you said, 14.5 alcohol. I think there's a bit more than that actually. Well, as we spoke about many times, you've got 10% to play with.
Yeah.
Vintage by vintage, so it potentially a bit more because there you feel it on the back palate. You get a little bit of hint and heat that comes from a bit more kind of smoky. Could be a Pinotage, could be also the vintage 2011. Again,
Yeah.
what is really amazing here is it's a 13 years old bottle.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that really came to maturity. That it's still so fragrant and so lively and so fresh. It's really well put together. This is sort of wine that, when do I drink it? Where do I put it? Do I put it as a first wine, as a second wine? I think if you go through that box, and we're going a little bit controversial here because we always start with the red and move to the white to finish it, as to clean up the palate. But I think it's a great crescendo, Toro, and then the Nikela, because first of all, I think the Nikela has much more shoulders. I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon is one of those grape variety that really brings so much depth, so much structure, and potential of edging. I mean, we talk about Bordeaux, as usual, but the capacity of Bordeaux and this grape variety to bring wine, with evolution to the market, and they are so poised, composed, fine, refined, even more than that. You think about the great vintage of Bordeaux, whatever. It's actually quite staggering, and this is a really good translation of the grape variety, but I think you also need to pay respect and potentially put your head down to the winemaking there, where 13 years down the line, the wine is still very much a great expression, really deciphering, translating, distillating a sense of place. You're definitely in a new world. There is that element to it,
Yeah.
but it has beautiful composure. It's definitely layered. So again, fantastic, very deep color, deep
Yeah.
core, a lot of coloring on a glass wall. As you turn it around, you can see that it really coat your glasses with color. So one of the elements of Cabernet is Roux Bernet, as they call it, that really brings that colorific element to it. So already from the color, you're expecting something that's got guts. It's some
Yeah.
structure, and then you go on the nose,
It's big.
and
Full.
straight away, you got herbal, you got mint, you got smoke, you got obviously Cabernet sort of angle with capsicum, with dark fruit, red fruit, a lot of berries, a lot of ripe, sort of almost jammed character. Again, some chocolate, some mocha, and then all of a sudden you got that massive amount of spices, brown spices, cooking spices, and then vanilla, cinnamon, cloves really translate the use of oak. What I would love to be able to do is to test um, a 2022 of this wine to see really potentially where the winemaking starts at, or if they have changed slightly their approach of winemaking. Because again, you have to put things in perspective. In 10 years, a winemaker will potentially change, and adjust a lot of his philosophy according to vintages, according to errors, and learning from errors, mistakes, and also, naturally your palate change and you expect different things from your wine. I was at the dinner on Monday night with a rhone producer, and it was really interesting to understand and to talk with the winemaker. And she was saying, what I did then, I realized it was a mistake. Now the wines I made are still good. I like them, but it's not what and where I want to see my wines in 10 years on, because yeah, maybe I pushed it a bit too far. Maybe I did that as a mistake. So they keep on, learning, and that's a beautiful thing.
Of course, yeah. You mentioned Australia a little bit in context of the style, and when I smelled this wine first, I had one memory which takes me back to another Cabernet from Coonawarra.
From
And
Coonawarra,
yeah, and this is exactly the nose, that poised, that really rich, concentrated dark
yeah, there's
fruit.
rocks, there's a bit of sage, there's definitely some herbal character. Yeah, you wouldn't go to Barossa because you don't have that sort of minty, but it's definitely a little bit of a bit of stony, a lot of smoke to me, and really packed, quite
Yeah,
concentrated with loads of jam fruit,
yeah,
a lot of black plum, blue plums, stone fruit in general. Yeah, it's a massive baby. You really, really, again here you really play with proteins. You go
yeah,
with the sort of wintry characteristic. And again, I would argue that potentially during the summer you can drink that slightly cooler just to maintain the freshness. Again, with sort of barbecued meat,
yeah,
because there is a lot of that sort of flavor profile, charcoal, grilled meat, cooked, sort of cracking element of wood fire.
yes. I'm not a sommelier, but when I think about this,
Smoke cigar.
these sort of wines, I think there's a couple of things which are really important. Is red meat ones, and the other one is herbs, because there's so much going on in there as well with herbs as well. I think that would work
You know
really
where,
well.
where I come from. We also have this habit as a starter or an aperitif to go with pate, sausages, saucisson as we call it, from different animals, sometimes with fruit inside, some nuts inside, and so on. And they bring you that sort of savory acidity character, and those kind of wine stands up to
Yeah,
this, very easily, and vice versa. The
yeah,
savoriness, the texture, and the sort of fatty elements
yeah,
of those dishes, or those delicatessen to some extent, really kind of bring some attraction, because then you can drink some robust red wine with them, without that.
yeah. And then just one more thing about this wine, which is not really related to the juice inside, but the story where the family came from. They actually from the UK originally, and Grangehurst estate is sort of reflects where they from.
The
And
village.
that, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
yeah,
we have another cuvee from this estate that we did a video on, and we attested that a while ago.
yeah,
And exactly the story. I think she's South African, and is English,
yeah, okay,
and
yeah,
they met in the UK, and eventually they moved back to her place, and then started again very, very small, and slowly grew as an estate, and now definitely one of the big players around.
yeah,
But it's very impressive. But it's a big boy. It's
it, yeah,
one of those wines that you need food with. You will not drink that almost, on its own. It's not the sort of things you open and you have a chat around. It's just too much.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, you can have a
But
chat around, but it's
nevertheless,
yeah, it's a long chat, I think.
balance. Even though arguably the balance is more on sort of on the body. It's a very sort of structured, muscular, powerful, slightly masculine. Even though I'm not sure I can use that word. It has that structure, that shoulders, and that power. in
Yeah.
it. But definitely, funnily enough, you still see that this bottle could actually be laid for a couple more years in the
Yeah.
cellar because it has so much energy still left.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like one of those powerful car when you press the accelerator and you're halfway and you're thinking there's much more to go, and I don't
Yeah.
really want to explore that. It's scary. There is definitely a lot of energy left in that bottle of oil that will translate, in the future. So it's definitely something you buy 3 bottles of, and then you sit and you taste them, 3 years in a row, and you see how the wines goes,
Yeah.
as long as the cellaring is spotless as such. But
Exactly.
very, very exciting bottle of wine with a lot of characteristics, a lot of broad characters, a lot of power, and time will tell. Time will tell how these things will move, but yeah, very, very impressive. Very impressive.
So one thing we can agree on is going to be a tough one to call at the end, but let's see the third one, because that's just to make it even more complicated. Is we're going into white and we're going into Rhone, 100% Marsanne, which is, again, on its own already a bit of an excitement if somebody likes Marsanne.
Well, the three great variety of the Northern Rhone is Viognier for Condrieu, basically, and Marsanne Roussanne
Yeah.
usually as a blend
Yeah.
for everything. Hermitage, Gros Hermitage, obviously Saint-Peray, Saint-Joseph. Cornas doesn't see any blend as such. But what is really interesting by Saint-Peray is basically everything else that doesn't really come in the Northern Rhone. Saint-Peray, well, arguably Condrieu is only white. It's
Yeah.
true, but Saint-Péray is only white. Condrieu is 400 hectares, Saint-Péray is 90. So that gives you already an idea of the size. But more importantly, that no one else does in that part of the region is that they also do sparkling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Supposed to
actually,
be a champagne competitor back in the days, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't go that far, but definitely, yes. Second fermentation in bottle, 100% Marsanne or Roussanne, according to the style you're trying to achieve. But rare, it's really, really hard to find it outside of the region because it's, as I said, 90 hectares. It's not that much. It's,
Yeah.
it's also quite steep, so production is very, very small. But Saint-Péray is really coming to the light because Condrieu is far too expensive. Gros Hermitage white, lately, especially with the climatology, it's been difficult to produce. Hermitage Blanc are far too expensive. Saint-Joseph Blanc, again, are not really the appellations for. They're much more on the red side. So Saint-Péray with the uniqueness and also potentially with a bit of sparkling really, really comes with an interest for restaurant tables because it's something new, something exciting, something a little
Yeah.
side of the main track as such, and fantastic wine. So the Boisseyt, again, an estate we worked quite closely with. We have a plethora of their different wines. They're
Yeah.
very established. I think they're 300 years, history since 7 or 8 or even 10
Yeah.
generation of making wines in the region. 2019 vintage, again, something that's got a bit of bottlage that really, really help with that grape variety. Even though it's always interesting with Marsanne and Roussanne because they are fantastic when they're young. Then they go sort of under the wave where they completely shut down. Eventually they come back on the other side with an oxidative kind of almondy straw sort of dried
Yeah.
fruit, dried herbal character. I mean, you can see on the color here, it's very kind of dark gold. It's
Yeah.
really almost like if you would compare an old Chardonnay, or Chenin Blanc, that's again that took a bit of age, and then yeah, bright medium plus viscosity. So I imagine this is a 13 and a half easy.
Yeah. It
14
is. Yeah. 13 and a half.
yeah, on the label. Yeah, you can kind of decipher that from the grape variety, the vintage, because 19 it's a great vintage, but it's a hot vintage. Some of the red are absolutely gorgeous, but they need so much time to come along
Yeah.
because there's so much, so much. And so again, not too cold because you will kill the flavor profile, not too warm because then you drink red wine because you really have that power. And wow, what a nose.
The nose
What
is, yeah,
what a
crazy.
nose. Pear, apple, bruised apple, a lot of nuts, roasted nuts, almonds, fresh almonds,
Yeah.
marzipan, lemon. I also almost get a sort of melon a sort of ripe or super ripe melon character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peach apricot, which could remain as well reminiscent of a sort of Viognier style.
Generally, the grape variety is a little bit like Viognier in its style when it's
Yeah,
single
yeah,
grape, isn't it? I mean, it
yeah.
has
Much
that
more
sort of
acidity,
oiliness
much
that,
more acidity, a bit less oily, and again, the use of oak will really kind of
yeah,
translate which style you are going to experience in your glass.
yeah,
Here, there's definitely some oak because you get again
yeah,
that sort of clove, cinnamon character, but again, very well measured in order not to be the footprint. You
yeah,
want the oak to just kind of bring you that sort of structure and limitation, almost like a drive rather than a typicity or a style or a character that just coming
yeah,
from oak. Well, everybody can do that. It's a bit like
yeah,
makeup. It's not.
yeah,
It's not the point. The point is you want to express the quality of the fruit, the quality of the vintage, your capacity to understand as a winemaker, and then bring that to the fore and to the final
yeah,
finished product to also sort of translate what the typicity of the
yeah,
grape variety and the sense of place, especially nowadays where people are much more interested about wine and have much more knowledge. Oak for two reasons. First of all, it's so super expensive, so
yeah,
it really brings up the price of wines, enormously because it's a luxury almost to use
yeah,
new barrel. But on the other hand, you also sort of play with an element of characters that sort of hide or give a perspective in time. And
yeah,
no one really wants to sit on wine for 10 years anymore.
yeah,
Restaurants have stopped that years ago, but
yeah,
also as person, as collector or as wine lovers, buying a case now and drinking it 5 years. Well, 5 years.
yeah,
But
exactly.
potentially, I don't even have the capacity to store it correctly. So
Yeah,
potentially, those ones will be damaged by them, and so on. So having the capacity to have something that is already mature for you, potentially mature in a really good surrounding cellar at the estate, what you're going to get is very much the epiphany, the archetype of an expression, and that's
yeah,
basically for me translating that,
yeah.
perfectly. Well,
And
such
where,
a there's a rightness to it as well.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it does feel like there was heat
Honey, honeysuckle,
when it made.
yeah,
When,
acoustic, beeswax. I always ask myself if when I taste wines like this, what would I say if it would be a blind tasting? Where would I go?
yeah, I would probably go with Viognier somewhere,
Yeah, yeah, I would. I tend
French
to agree with
Viognier
that.
somewhere. Yeah,
I tend to agree with that, but to me, there's also an element of lanolin, and I haven't tasted the wines in front of you, so I know that's not. But the first impression of lanolin is wet wool, and wet wool normally is semillon,
okay, yeah, okay,
and
I
to
can
me
see
there
that.
is that
Yeah,
semillon note on the nose, old semillon, and the color fits as well. Obviously, semillon has a very
yeah,
very low acidity, so it's a very different format. But yeah,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is potentially where I would go first hint, and
yeah.
then the rest will come on the palate because that will sort of give me more information.
And the big question is, how would you pair it with, or what would you pair it with? Because that's usually especially with something like this. I think you need food here. That's for sure, 100%.
Yeah, again, we're not playing Sauvignon Blanc here. It's not Chenin. It's not. There is some beautiful, driven lift of acidity, but it's much more spheric. It's much more so unctuous, creamy, dense, and definitely powerful. Yeah, again, yeah, the food element will sort of balance it out. For me, I would play. I would go risotto,
Yeah,
wild mushroom risotto because of that texture. I would play with. This is to me. That's why I like to do white, red, and then white, because then if you think about a wine like this, that really is capable to talk and almost sing. After those
yeah,
two reds, you go cheese.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, goat cheese will work wonders because of, let's say, creamy camembert, Tamworth, Comté, Edge Comté, Gouda, that sort of cheese that have a lot of flavors. also balanced acidity, and the wine structure, the sort of wine unctuosity, power, and characteristic will definitely, balance the flavor very well, and also, will kind of clean up your palate as well, so you can have more cheese as such, and
Yeah.
then more wine. It's a perfect, playing.
Yeah. 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 Well, I can agree with that, and I can agree with the risotto as well, because you want something creamy, I think, with this wine. But
Mm. Again, is nowadays much less trendy to use cream, in your food. But if you imagine you do something like a poulard with mushrooms, you do a creamy sauce with some poultry or some textured fish like a monkfish, for example, sea bass. You do like a whole sea bass. That makes so much sense because you will have that texture, and the texture of the wine, the acidity, and that will really kind of play, a balancing act on your palate, elevating the food profile, and as well kind of cleaning up, and also having the capacity to enjoy both sides of the spectrum,
yeah.
without getting tired as such.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, veal for me would be a perfect match as well.
Mm.
A veal chop, for example, beautifully roasted without going too hard. So you want to keep that juiciness into the meat. Pork. Pork is a white meat as such.
Yeah.
That would work.
With
Fantastically
the
well. Nice, beautiful
fattiness. Yeah.
fillet. I mean, what is amazing with white is the versatility.
Mm.
You almost play with the proteins, or you can definitely play with proteins. Play with cheese. You play as an aperitif. You play, entree starters as such. Even though wine like this definitely is a second bottle. It's you
Yeah.
start with something fresher, and then you move on to that to sort of impress, to sort of sit down and have
Yeah.
that conversation that you need to have, because the wine will bring you almost into a philosophic rhetoric.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a gorgeous expression, really beautiful.
Well, only one thing left is we have to decide which one wins. It's a tricky one because three, I think, very good wines again, but three very different ones. Okay, that's for you. Okay,
No
is
question.
it the value for money or
I think it's just the capacity to excite you. As I said many times, I'm much more of a red drinker than a white drinker.
yeah,
Uh, but I think, yes, this the sense of place, the place itself, which, as I said, discovered
yeah,
last year, like physically when I went there, I was really, really impressed. The climatology,
yeah,
the old vine, the rustic, crafted element of Toro, and to me, this sort of approachability, I think the one is staggering. Yeah, value for money without that, knowing what has to be done in order to bring that to the fore. I think there's no question. It's definitely the wine of the day as far as I'm concerned.
okay, cool. I don't know.
What's yours?
I'm torn between that and the Nikela. I don't know why, but uh, tonight the reds were more impressive for me than the white itself. But
I,
maybe
I
because it
I'll
reminds me
go
of
I'll go
Novara.
I'll go Toro, and then I'll go Saint-Peray, and
Yeah,
at the end I'll do the Cabernet again, because maybe I'm too biased when it comes to the grape
yeah,
variety itself. So that's my bad. Don't take that word for,
yeah,
for granted. But I like the Saint-Péray a lot.
mm,
I think in a dinner at home, this
yeah,
is what I would serve first, the Toro, and then move onto the Boisseyt, and then eventually, if I have to open a third bottle, which is very often the case, then
yeah,
I'll go to Nikela, to just kind of put everything flat, and just kind of, okay, this is the big boy, and then what you see is what you get. But I think
yeah,
the Toro really, really sings, and then definitely punch well above its own weight.
yeah. Okay. Well, that was a good little tasting, and as you know, they come in little packs like this. You just open them, pull out, clip it, and then a glass of wine, and you can discover loads of
Exactly, and
different
you
things.
can you can you can really see, and sort of translate, and have your own opinion. At the end, we just kind
Yeah,
of share on the heat as such, what we think
Oh,
of each
yeah.
cuvée, but it doesn't mean that it's not open for discussion.
Yeah.
But still, I am a
You are
Toro.
on the red.
I'm
Okay.
a Toro tonight.
Well, guys, enjoy whatever you enjoy, and thank you, Chris, for this. And
Pleasure. See
I
you
guess
soon.
see you next year. I think it's strange to say because it's too early when we're recording this, but
Oh
yeah.
wow! Yeah, wow.
I would say Merry
We
Christmas to
shall.
everyone. But my Christmas
In
tree
any
is not up
case,
yet.
yes, potentially for all of us, we will catch up in 2025,
Yeah, exactly.
with more
Strange
wine
to say.
and more travel and more exposure, and definitely something to say.
Yeah.
Definitely something to say. I'm afraid.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, guys. Have a lovely Christmas. Bye bye.
Thank you, and you. All the very best. Merry Christmas to you all. Cheers, and good health. More importantly,
Exactly.
good health.